Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Ashley Venture-Ette, and if you're here, it's because you are looking into going or moving to Buenos Aires. And if you are, honestly, you will not regret it. I was there earlier this year for 3 months, seeing my family, and Buenos Aires just blew my mind. It is just big and beautiful, and the people are friendly, and just, the list goes on about Buenos Aires. But I thought I'd help you out and give you 10 things that you should know before moving to Buenos Aires. And so just so you know, everything I'm going to tell you, I do have up on my blog, which I have linked down below in the description box. And in my blog post, I have, links to sites that I think will be very helpful for you. So without further ado, let's get started. So first, let's talk visas. And this is more in terms of like short-term, like visiting stay. So there is a list of up to 80 countries, and that includes like the US, Australia, and the UK, where you can enter Argentina for up to 90 days without a visa. So that means there's just no payment, nothing. It's simple, just get that stamp and go right through. If you are looking for something more long-term or like a business visa and whatnot, I do have that linked, in my blog below, and that'll take you to the official website that'll give you all of the information that you would need. Second thing is housing. So I did get to stay with my family in Argentina, but finding housing in Argentina is totally doable. The prices for a flat in the city center ranges from $560 US to like $740 US, and that's for like a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom flat in the city center. So yeah, you can look on Airbnb, and there is also Craigslist Buenos Aires where you can look at. And another site that I suggest is roomgo.com. You create a profile, and with this profile you can look for other rooms or flats to rent. So I highly recommend those sites. In terms of neighborhoods, the first neighborhood that I highly recommend is Palermo. Palermo is like smack dab in the city center, and it is just huge, and there's just so much going on there. There's just great restaurants and bars, and it has a great nightlife if you're into that. But this one is the most popular, and it is definitely the biggest in Buenos Aires in terms of neighborhoods. Second neighborhood is Belgrano, and Belgrano is just a little bit north of Palermo, but still in the city center. So it just has great restaurants and bars and shops and everything like that. And in Belgrano Sea is where you'll find the famous Chinatown, and the Chinatown there is awesome because it has just great restaurants, Asian restaurants, so you have like Japanese food, Thai food, Chinese food of course, and the list goes on. And there's also just great like Chinese shops, so if you're looking for like international like ingredients to cook with, and Chinatown is definitely your best bet. The third neighborhood I recommend is Recoleta. Recoleta is just like further south in the city. It is the most expensive neighborhood. It has just a lot of Parisian inspired architecture, and so in this neighborhood you'll find like the fancy restaurants, the fancy bars, the fancy shops, just everything fancy. So if you're just a fancy kind of person, then Recoleta is probably the neighborhood for you. Recoleta is also the neighborhood where the famous Recoleta cemetery is that many tourists go to. Highly recommend it. And there is a weekly art fair that happens every weekend, which I also just highly recommend. It's just a great way to spend your weekends. So let's talk jobs, and more specifically English teaching jobs. So I was there working online, but if you wanted to teach English, out of school, you totally can, and there is a demand for it. But just know that the average salary is anywhere from $600 to $1,200 US a month. So in terms of saving, you're probably not going to save a lot, but you are going to have an amazing time in Buenos Aires. Just know that the average salary in Buenos Aires anyways is about $700 US, and so if the locals can make it work and enjoy a great way of life in the city, then you can too. Number 4, transportation. So the one great thing about Buenos Aires is that it does have a great public transportation system. It has the metro, the Metrobus, the trains, the buses, and it's all super cheap to use. So to use it, you can get a monthly pass for about like 400 Argentine pesos, which is about $14 US. Also, you can get a contactless subte card, which you just kind of top up this card with however much money you want, and every time you use it, it's honestly anywhere from about like you know, $1 to $2 you know, for a ride like on the metro or train or whatever. And one app that I do highly recommend that you get is the Buenos-Ette app. And this app is amazing because, you know, when you arrive in Buenos Aires, you're probably not going to know where to go. This app will tell you how to get from point A to point B with the appropriate public transportation if you want to use the bus or the metro or whatever. So it's really helpful with that. And also it'll let you know if there's traffic, and it'll also just let you know kind of like the schedule of all the public transportation. So highly recommend you downloading this app if you go to Buenos Aires. Another app that I do recommend is, of course, Uber. Taxis aren't ridiculously expensive, but if you want something just maybe a little more secure and reliable, Uber, you know, is in Buenos Aires, so I highly recommend it. It is, you know, also, it's not like the cheapest like the public transport, but it is there. So let's talk safety. So Buenos Aires, for the most part, is honestly a very safe city, but the one thing you really need to look out for is the petty crime, because the cost of living is just kind of high compared to the average salary. There's just a lot of thieves going around, and so definitely be aware of your belongings. You'll see all of the locals just carrying their bags, like especially their backpacks in the front. It is just highly recommended that you do not really walk around holding your phone in your hand in the streets, especially just kind of alongside the road, just because people can just drive by and snatch it, or some people will just like walk or run by you and snatch it. So definitely be careful with that. And also with your purse, ladies, do not hang your bag on the back of your chair. I did this mistake and my purse got stolen, even though I was like way back in the restaurant and I was in a table of like 5 other people, and no one saw this guy do it. Like, these guys are so good. So when at a restaurant, just keep your purse with you, like on you. Don't even put it on the seat next to you, because yeah, when you least expect it, they'll just take it. So so be careful. So let's talk costs. So while many other things like, you know, housing and public transportation and whatnot might be cheap, a lot of other things like, you know, shopping is not necessarily cheap, just because there's a few reasons. One, everything that is imported is just very expensive because it is just heavily taxed. So like your Apple products, you know, just like your big international brands like, you know, Zara and whatnot, it's just gonna be very expensive. Also, just a lot of your local shops like, you know, boutiques and, you know, things like that, it's just very expensive because of inflation. So when you want to go out and, you know, buy like certain things, just know that the cost is just going to be just kind of expensive. Also, eating out is not as cheap as I thought it was going to be. Prices, you know, kind of start like $7, $8 and then just kind of go up from there. So it's kind of like home prices, at least like US home prices for me. But if you do want like a longer list of just like general costs, I do have that link in my blog post, which again is linked down below. So number 6, language. So the national language in Argentina is Spanish, but do you need to know Spanish in Buenos Aires? And honestly, not necessarily. It is a major city, and so there's a bunch of tourists and a bunch of international people who live there. So quite a few people do know English, but I would always recommend anyone just learning a few words or phrases when moving to a country. It'll just make your life so much easier. Argentine Spanish is just very different from any other Spanish I've encountered in Spain or in Mexico. They speak it just very fast and with like this Italian flair, so they kind of like go up in their tone. And also they use just different words for different things, and how they pronounce their double L instead of a y, they say a j sound. So for example, yo, which means I, they say jo, and like there, instead of allá, they say allá. And so it was just little things like that that can be a little confusing. So if you learn Spanish, it probably wasn't Argentine Spanish, but no worries. People there are very friendly, and a lot of people do speak English. So let's just talk food. So when people think of Argentina, people immediately just think of, okay, the steak. And Yes, that is kind of true. In Argentina, meat is just a huge part of their diet. But one thing that you should know is that there are a lot of immigrants that come from like Germany, Spain, and Italy. And especially with Italy, there's just a huge Italian influence in Buenos Aires, and you see that in the food as well. Like mainly with the pasta, you see a lot of different like pasta shops where they just make freshly made pasta and pasta sauce and, you know, pizzas and empanadas and everything like that. And even in the grocery stores, you just see like this huge section of just like freshly made pastas and gnocchis, and I was just like, wow, I didn't realize that this would be like such a great pasta place. So that's just one thing that you'll see in terms of like the food. In terms of flavor, the Argentines, they're just not a fan of spice like at all. Like a lot of people think like, oh, they're in South America, it must be kind of like Mexico where it's like a lot of spicy food and salsas. No, they do not eat any of that. If you go to an Indian restaurant in Buenos Aires, they really like tame down the spicy flavors in the food. So if you go to an Indian restaurant there, I just highly recommend that you get the hottest level if you want just like the least bit of like spiciness in your food. So let's talk alcohol. So when people think of Argentina, people also just think wine. And yes, you are going to see a lot of that in Buenos Aires. Go to the grocery store and the wine section is just massive. And what's great is that it's just mainly Argentine wine. And the Argentine wine is really good. You have the Malbec, which is a grape that is just native to Argentina, but of course they do have other great imported wines. And what's even better is that it is really cheap to buy bottles of wine for as low as like $4, if not a bit less. But one thing I did find surprising is that there is a huge craft beer culture in Buenos Aires, like especially when I was like in Palermo in the city center. You just saw one craft beer bar after another, and also prices weren't too bad. It was like maybe about $4 or $5 a pint and upward. But yeah, so you're gonna have a lot of great wine, but also a lot of great craft beer as well. So let's talk weather. So Buenos Aires does experience all 4 seasons, but one thing is that they are reversed because they are in the southern hemisphere. The winter is from June to August, spring is from September to November, summer is from December to March or February, and fall is from March to May. In the summer, it does get really hot. It gets, you know, up to 90 degrees Fahrenheit or 30 degrees Celsius and hotter. And then in the winter, it doesn't snow, but it does get as low as like, you know, 50 degrees Fahrenheit or like, you know, 10 degrees Celsius. So if you do plan to stay for at least a full year, you'll definitely need clothes for just like all 4 seasons. Or if you're just going temporarily, then of course just pack appropriately depending for which season you're there for. So here is a bonus, and that is about the culture. So something to know about Argentine culture is that it is just very relaxed. Like in some parts of Europe, like Italy and Spain, they just really do focus on just having like a good way of life and just enjoying life in general. So they don't really focus on like, you know, working extremely hard. Also, you'll just kind of see that in terms of like the times that like many shops and restaurants open. Like many shops just kind of, you know, don't open until like a bit later, till like 9 or like 10 a.m. and whatnot. Like a lot of things really just tend to not open early. And also they do have a siesta as well. So many businesses just do have a 2-hour or if not 3-hour or maybe more, like, you know, lunch break or siesta break. And then a lot of restaurants for dinner, they don't open until like at least 7 and more like 8 p.m. at night, but they do stay open pretty late. So yeah, it's just kind of like, you know, enjoy the evening, stay up late, sleep in a bit, and then just kind of like do it all over again. But Argentines, honestly, they are just the friendliest, just outgoing people I've just ever met. I met like so many kind Argentines, and they're just the kind of people that if they like you, you will know. Like they will just definitely make an effort with you. I had an Argentine family, like after meeting me just once, they picked me up in 2 cars to take me out for the day at a market, and, you know, took me out for lunch and everything. And all they said was, we just want you to have a good time and just be happy. And that was it. I was like, wow, that is just honestly just so kind and just so selfless. So yeah, so Argentines, just great people, just very relaxed culture. Buenos Aires is just a fun city. So yeah. All right, so that wraps it up for today. I really hope you found this helpful. If you have any more questions about Buenos Aires, please, feel free to ask me in the comments. And if you want me to make another video going in depth about, some other things about Buenos Aires, just let me know. I'll be more than happy to do so. Like this video if you found it insightful, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.
I'm gonna take my road, make my road. I'm gonna walk on by all night long. I'm looking for a home, I'm gonna